Coming up on the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
16 protected wine regions. Can you vouch for that?
Sure.
The Dalmatian dog is native to Croatia and was originally used to protect the horses and the borders of Dalmatia.
Yes.
Dalmatia sounds like a made-up thing. Asheville.
Asheville.
Shouting out to Asheville.
Hey, Asheville.
That's like the Brooklyn of the Carolinas, right?
It's the Paris of the South.
Let me just correct you, if I may, Doctor. Hashtag.
Sexy bottle shots.
Very good.
And now, the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
The cell phones have been silenced. The wine is poured. And just like that, the podcast begins. The Tall Mike Wine Podcast. The wine podcast that's not all about wine. The wine podcast like no other. And I'm Mike Stone, your friend and taller than average wine obsessive and host of the podcast. Heard in 48 of these United States and the District of Columbia and all around the world in 77 countries on 6 continents. In places like Frankfurt, Germany, Vancouver and Langley, British Columbia, Zurich, Switzerland, and Singapore, which is a city and a country. Imagine studying geography in Singapore. 1 main island, 3 large islands, and 58 smaller islands. Write that down. There'll be a quiz later. Wherever you are, on a treadmill, in the car, or just hiding in the bushes near a golf course in Florida, I'm glad you're locked into the show. Now do me a favor, help me make it bigger and better and stronger and faster. Make sure you're subscribed so you hear every episode and share it on your socials. Share it with your book club. Share it with your friends when you're out drinking wine. And if you want to go next level, helping the podcast, you can actually chip in a few bucks to keep it commercial free and keep it going. Become a sponsor at a very reasonable monthly rate. Click on the support the show link in the show notes, and I thank you in advance for your support. Now on to episode 57. From the Vintner's Room at Nicholson Ranch in Sonoma, California. Yes, that's Sonoma, wine country. I work here, but it's after hours, so let's talk. My guest is in the wine industry. She also holds a doctoral degree in community college education, master's and bachelor's degrees in French, a graduate minor in Spanish, and a Wine and Spirits Educational Trust Level 3 Advanced designation. She is a member of the Circle of Wine Writers, Les Dames d'Escoffier International, Sacramento and Sonoma chapters, and the International Food, Wine, and Travel Writers Association. But like most of us, she also has a job. She is a brand ambassador for Croatian premium wine imports. She also takes the occasional pet sitting gig. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Elizabeth Smith. That's probably the longest intro I've ever done. So many things.
So many things, so many years, so many experiences.
Right, and we're going to talk about all of it. Now, first, let's explain the title of this episode. This episode is cursed. We were in this room a few weeks ago and had a lovely chat, recorded like usual. But the computer ate my podcast. 2 weeks later, you were kind and gracious enough to put me on your very busy calendar, and sadly, we had a freak power outage that afternoon here at the ranch. Strike 2! And here we are again. You, me, and the wines, and our fingers are crossed. So far, everything looks to be in order. Let's have a sip of wine, just to make me feel better. Calm my nerves.
I really think it was a trick because I brought 2 wines the first time and now I have 2 more wines the second time. So maybe you just really wanted 4 wines.
It's true. I need to get more people in here and bring me more wine and just pretend to record a podcast. What a ploy that would be, wouldn't it? All right, let's jump into the gig with the Croatians. And I know there's a lot to this story because you told me you went over there and stayed a lot longer than you'd planned. How did it all happen?
How did it happen? I connected with the importers online. They were following my journey through Central Europe and noticed I hadn't been to Croatia. So when I planned a trip in the spring to go to Italy and Hungary, the Croatians decided I should just add that on to my itinerary. So they hosted me, planned visits throughout Croatia, 20 wineries in 3 weeks. And I loved it so much that I decided to rent an apartment and stay another 4 weeks. So 7 weeks in Croatia.
So your initial trip to Europe was to where?
It was to Verona, Italy, the wine fair, and then the Hungarian Wine Summit. That was the first 2 weeks.
And this was a trip that you had planned in advance?
Yes, I sort of planned in advance. Life kind of threw me a curveball, and I had all this free time, so I started applying for wine events and trade shows in Europe, and I was accepted at 4 things. One of them was Italy in Verona, then the Hungarian Wine Summit in Budapest, and the London Wine Fair in London, of course. And then I was invited to do a little celebration in Austria in June.
So you were just go.
I did. I couldn't find a job, but I could find people that wanted me to come and taste wine.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that briefly as much as you can. The curveball that life threw you was prior to this trip. You got laid off from the company you were working
I did.
for.
I got laid off from a major wine retailer where I was the wine and winemaker copywriter.
She was writing all the pretty copy for the emails that people get for some of these online retail wine establishments.
Yes, and the website content.
Who shall not go, who shall remain nameless.
A major wine retailer.
That is mostly online.
Yes.
No, it's entirely online.
It's entirely online, yes.
They don't have a store.
That's right. They have an online store.
They have an online store. And if they had a store, there might be a dress code.
Yes.
You would not be allowed to wear clothes in the store.
That's right.
We won't say any more than that.
That's right.
It's an online retailer.
Exactly.
All right. So you started the trip.
I did in April in
Okay.
Italy. My first trip to Italy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wine in Italy.
And there were a lot of Italian wineries at this trade show, but I still tended to gravitate towards Central European wines. So most of the events and tastings and people I met with were from Central Europe. So like wines of Serbia, wines of Hungary, a Slovenian winemaker.
Well, they're sort of in the neighborhood. I mean, you look at the map, like, oh, look,
They
there's
are.
Italy. And oh, look, there's Croatia, like parallel.
Right.
Just across the water.
Well, that's what I think a lot of people geographically don't know how close things are. So Slovenia borders Italy in the north.
Right.
And the Istrian Peninsula of Croatia is right there. And that whole area is called Istria. So there's Italian, Slovenian, Croatian, Istria that are all once was the same region. So,
but if you look at Croatia as far as wine production goes and Italy as far as wine production goes, it's apples and oranges. I did a little research into Croatia. They make about 2 million cases of wine per year for the whole country. Okay. Italy produces roughly 500 and 600 million cases of wine per year. So it's not very much wine. And the majority, according to this thing that I read, is consumed domestically. With only about 30% exported. So 30% of 2 million cases. Now we're talking about an even smaller amount of wine.
Yes, because they have so many tourists.
And then they send a lot of the wine to Bosnia.
They do.
And Germany and the United States. All right. So you're in Italy. And then you were going
to Hungary.
All right.
I did. And that was a fun adventure. I left Italy. I met with this is a good segue into the wine we tasted the first time. Is I was at Italy. I was going to Somló in Hungary before I went to the Hungarian Wine Summit. And a winemaker's wife attended Italy. So she and I drove from Verona to Austria, where they have a chalet. So they own a chalet and rent a chalet in Austria, but they have a winery in Hungary about 3 or 4 hours by car from where they live. So I went there first, and then we drove to Somló, where I spent the weekend. Somló.
Okay.
Yes. Hungary's smallest appellation.
Oh, okay.
And the native grape is Juhfark, which we tasted.
We did.
The first go around. Yes, the native white variety.
We had a lot of fun with the Juhfark.
Fekete was the winery.
I'll put this in the show notes to give them a little bit of love, even though we're not
Yes.
tasting the wine here. We tasted it before.
We did taste the wine. It was very mineral driven.
A little bit peachy.
And the minerality comes from Somló is a former volcano.
All right, so now you're at a chalet in Somló.
Well, I was in a chalet in Austria, but
In
then
Austria.
I was in a guest house, and I have to say, super cute guest house in Somló.
Okay.
And then I visited a few wineries when I was there, and one of them was Fekete, which is the winery that arranged all the visits there.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I headed to the Hungarian Wine Summit in Budapest.
And then when did you end up in Croatia?
I was at the Hungarian Wine Summit from a Sunday night till Thursday. I took a train from Budapest to Zagreb. It's about 6.5 hours with lots of stops.
Here's another fun fact about Croatian wine. 16 protected wine regions. Can you vouch for that?
Sure.
Around 130 indigenous grape varieties.
Yes.
Can you name 7?
I can try.
No, don't worry about it. I'm just joking. Croatia has been producing wine for not 100 years, not 1,000 years, but 2,400 years.
Yes.
That's crazy. Now, here's something that maybe people listening to this podcast can relate to. Wine consumption. Croatia's per capita wine consumption is an impressive 46.9 liters annually, which isn't just bottles, because each bottle is 3/4 of a liter.
That's right.
So that's actually more than that many bottles.
Yes.
Which is really like, a bottle a week.
Yep. I'd say it skews higher. It did when I was there.
When you're hanging out with people in the business, it should skew higher.
Yes.
So at what point did they decide you needed to work for them, these Croatians?
Well, I spent all the time there during my stay the last 4 weeks when I was just renting the apartment and sort of exploring on my own. They contacted me and said, we think we'd like you to help us get in the market in California. So it took a little while for it to happen. And there's a word for that in Croatian. It's called pomalo, which means it's going to happen. It will happen in due time. Don't worry. They have a very laid back approach. And so come August 1st, we finally agreed for me to work the market here in California. So that's how it happened. I spent so much time there, 20 wineries and the 4 major regions, and a lot of them probably in the 16 smaller sub-regions.
Protected regions.
That's right.
I like that term, protected.
Protected.
And now you're back in the United States, and you're here to tell us all about Croatian wine. But the first wine you brought for me is not a Croatian wine.
I brought you the first wine is a Cabernet Franc from Slovakia from Tajna Winery. Tajna means secret.
Tajna?
Yes.
Tajna.
Jna.
Tajna.
Tajna. And the story behind this wine is I was at a Hungarian Cabernet Franc conference in November of 2022. And sitting beside me at the conference was one of the award-winning wineries. And it was Tajna, and it was the owner. His name is Rusty. That's what he calls me Beth. I call him Rusty. He got up to speak about the wine. They had the medal winner stand up. And I just happened to be beside him, and I grabbed my phone and I started recording his speech. And then when he sat down, I said, I recorded this. Do you want this? He was like, oh my God, yes, I'd love to have it. So then we exchanged WhatsApp, and I said, I need to come visit your winery. So it's happened that I got invited to judge a wine competition in Hungary, and I decided to stretch the trip out, and I went to Tajna. I took the train from Budapest to Slovakia, and he met me at the train station. And then he arranged a visit to his winery, a master class, some visits to other wineries in Slovakia. And when I left, he asked which wines I wanted to take. And I was like, well, of course, the Cabernet Franc. So that's how this Cabernet Franc made it to the U.S. They are not yet distributed here, but they want to be.
So this bottle is not available in the United States
It's
via
not.
import. This is like a smuggled-in bottle.
Yeah, I guess I sort of smuggled it in. I have global entry. I can bring whatever I want.
All right. Of course you can. So you made friends over there with all these different people in all these different countries. in countries that we don't think about when we think about wine
No,
country.
and Slovakia is really interesting because they don't have a lot of protected regions. So they have more freedom to make what they think does well or what they like to make.
Okay. So the winery is called Tajna.
Tajna, which means secret.
We're sipping the Cabernet Franc from the 2019 vintage. It's a nice dark
It is
ruby
dark.
color, just like you would expect a Cabernet Franc. It has a lot of nice floral notes on the nose. Something a little bit vegetal, like a little bit of, not really bell pepper, but something that makes me think maybe they use some stems in the winemaking process, maybe some whole cluster. It's really nice. I've been sipping it the whole time.
It's really nice.
The whole time we've been talking, I've been sipping it.
Me too. I'm glad you opened that. And I want to say cheers to Rusty. Make sure he knows I'm sipping this wine finally after bringing it home over a year ago.
Rusty, you did a nice job on this wine. It's still got some nice acidity to it. It's not that old.
No, it's not that old.
Not super tannic. Do you know how long it spends in barrel?
I probably should know that. It's probably in the recording I did when he stood up and spoke about it.
It's not important. Nobody can get this wine in the United States because this is the only bottle.
I only bring the unicorn wines to this.
This is the only bottle in the United States right now. And we're
we're sipping it.
On a Tuesday night in Sonoma, winery after hours. No other people here, which is one of the beauties of the podcast.
That's right. That means we don't have to share.
We don't have to share. But we would share.
We would.
If there were other people here. We
would share.
We are the kind of people who believe that sharing is caring. So let's talk about Croatia real quick. I just went a little bit nuts with the fun facts. I got all the fun facts about the wine, the fun facts about Croatia.
That's right. You didn't have all those fun facts the first time.
I didn't have them before because there was a printer issue. I know. Again,
the cursed podcast.
This episode is cursed. Dalmatian dogs. The Dalmatian dog is native to Croatia and was originally used to protect the horses and the borders of Dalmatia.
Yes.
Dalmatia sounds like a made-up thing.
It's real, and it's probably the most well-known of the wine regions and the area in tourism because that's along the Adriatic. That's where all the tourists go, is to the Croatian Riviera to spend summers.
Neckties. The necktie was invented in Croatia.
Yes, I learned that when I was there.
17th century by the soldiers who wore silk scarves known as cravats, which, of course, is a French word.
It is.
There's also Tesla, not the car. Nikola Tesla.
That's right. Nikola Tesla, and the Serbians claim him, too.
Right. He was born in Croatia in 1856.
Yes.
Visitors can tour his childhood home, which is now a museum.
And I met a tour guide, my tour guide in Zagreb, my first weekend. She takes people on tours outside of Zagreb, and she talked about taking a group there. I haven't been, but...
When you visited, did you visit Hum?
I did not.
Are you aware of Hum?
I did not.
Hum is the smallest village in Europe. Only 17 residents.
I did not visit that.
Well, put it
on my list along with Tesla.
All right, we're going to switch gears here. I'm going to present you again with your official Tall Mike Wine Podcast coasters.
Yay.
You can keep these too. I gave you some
Thank
last
you.
time
I have so many I can give them out, which is what you would love me to do.
You could open your own bar.
That's right. I'm going to call it the Tall Mike Wine Podcast Bar.
Podcast Coaster Bar.
The Coaster Bar, that's right.
If you'd like your very own set of Tall Mike Wine Podcast coasters, they are the official coaster of the Tall Mike Wine Podcast. They have my picture on them. They're suitable for you to put your wine glass on, and you can get a nice swirl if you do it right.
Oh, and this is funny, but today, not totally off topic, but I was cleaning out things, and I found the original coasters you gave me my first time when I stopped by here.
Oh, when we first met.
A few years ago, 2021. I found a pair, and I added them to the stack.
So now you have more.
I have enough for plenty of people to come over and have wine and have one of your coasters.
All right. Well, that's the thing. That's the intent, is that you use them with your friends, and they say, who is this guy on the coaster? He looks very suave. And then you say, he has a podcast. And they say, right. Well, he looks very suave. I have to listen to the podcast. And that's how we grow the podcast. If you would like your own set of coasters, send me an email. That is tallmikewine@gmail.com. www.thetalmicwine.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, thank you. I love everything about podcasting. I think I told you this before, but when we hit record and I'm sitting here on this couch, it's the most peaceful I feel ever. I'm sitting here, I've got my notes, I've got a guest, I've got wine. It's everything I need in my life. This is my passion, podcasting and wine. How about sharing the podcast on your social media feed? How about subscribing so you don't miss an episode? How about scrolling through the whole list of episodes to catch up on the episodes you've missed? Now we're going to talk about Elizabeth's early life. You've been listening to her voice. If you're wearing earbuds, you're getting this nice, lilting southern inflection from the Carolinas, right?
Yes, from Asheville, North Carolina. I have to do the shout out. I guess.
Asheville.
Asheville.
Shouting out to Asheville.
Hey, Asheville.
That's like the Brooklyn of the Carolinas, right?
It's the Paris of the South, I understand. The San Francisco of the South.
I like that even better.
I've heard Portland, Oregon of the South. Because it has a big beer culture. And,
right.
you know, it's a little pocket of kind of funky, hippie, liberal in North Carolina. Artsy, very artsy music, craft beer, craft spirits, not as much wine. They do have the Biltmore Estate, and they have an urban winery, at least one. They may have more now. I haven't been back in a couple of years.
Were you there as a child?
Yes, I was born and raised there.
Why was your family there?
My dad worked for the civilian division of the Air Weather Service in a federal building, so he was a federal employee. And he had gotten the job there, and my mom was born and raised in Asheville.
So she's a native.
And they met in a mixed doubles bowling league, and they used to bowl together.
Well, you know what that leads to.
Yes. Kids, apparently, and Wednesday nights in the bowling alley.
So they bowled on Wednesdays.
And I do not bowl.
They got married. They had some kids. How many kids?
2.
And you have a sibling, which is...
a sister.
How's she doing?
She's still in Asheville.
Okay.
And she has a daughter, my niece, who's in college in the university.
What does your sister do?
Studying pre-med.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty impressive. She just had a birthday, too, since we recorded this the first time.
I had a birthday since we recorded this the first time.
So your birthday is the same day as my sister's, September 8th. Yes. And my niece's is September 5th. And my mom's was September 1st. So lots of Virgos.
I'm toasting all of them, sipping this lovely Cab Franc.
It is great, isn't it? I haven't tasted it in a year.
It goes down quite easily. I hope the nice people from Slovakia pick up an importer here in the United States.
I do too.
Because the wine is delicious. So in the house, when you were a kid in Asheville with you and your sister and your mom and your dad, when it would be dinner time, was there wine on the table?
There was not wine on the table.
Oh.
My dad was a very strict Southern Baptist.
Oh.
Yes.
We won't hold that against him.
Yeah, he was a really good person. Now, my mom used to indulge a little before she got married. I learned later in life, but it wasn't like this kind of wine.
You know, this kind of wine in this country there wasn't a lot of it.
There wasn't a lot of good wine.
Fancy.
And
There's a lot of jug wine.
And there wasn't a lot in Western North Carolina, let's just say. And the wine we would have had probably would have been kind of like jug wine in a bottle in a grocery store.
Might have been from California.
Or an ABC store.
Might have been from California. All right, so you grew up in Asheville, and then you began your epic education journey. We talked about all your educational bona fides at the top of the show. What was driving you to achieve all of those degrees?
I think I take a lot after my dad. My dad was very driven and motivated. He achieved a bachelor's degree. He was one of the few in his family. He had 7 brothers and sisters, so there were 8. He and his younger sister were the only 2, I think, in the family that got college degrees. And so he was very driven. And he worked on a master's degree, but never finished it because he held his ground and wouldn't give in on his thesis that he was wrong. They said he was wrong, and he said he was right, and he wouldn't compromise.
What was the topic?
Oh, my gosh, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
We'll skip over that. He was a math major, though. Okay.
He had some sort of theory about something in mathematics.
And math, and he proved it, but they didn't believe it, I guess.
They said, we don't think so.
And so he was all but thesis, I guess, from getting his master's degree. But when I earned my bachelor's degree, it was in French education. And after my student teaching experience, I did not want to teach public school. I know how hard it is, and I admire everyone that does it, but it was not for me. So I went back to get my master's degree so I could teach college, and I went back to the same college my dad went to, the University of Tennessee, and I ended up getting my master's degree there. I did finish my degree.
What was your thesis?
I did the non-thesis option, and I had to take 3 of my research papers and expand them. And I don't honestly remember all of them, but I do remember one of them was about Cyrano de Bergerac. Cyrano, but it was about Cyrano the person and Cyrano the play, and how his life differed from the play version. You know,
Cyrano,
what we learned, the movie and the play.
With the big nose,
yes,
who got his friend.
The romantic side of it, and then his real life.
So he was a real person.
Yes, and I did write, one of my papers was about women in French literature.
Who's your favorite?
Oh, gosh, who's my favorite?
I know that's
Madame Bovary.
Oh, okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah, because I'm kind of drawn to women that are caught in, I guess, positions, and they're trying to be more.
All right, so you got your master's degree, and then you just kept going. You just kept going.
After I did my master's degree, I said, never again. I am done. And then I started teaching. And then some people from George Mason University came down and kind of swept a few of us off our feet about getting this doctoral degree on our own terms. Locally, we're going to make it as easy as possible for you to get this community college education degree. And we had the classes locally 1 year. And then after that, they sort of abandoned us. And me and another colleague, we were the only 2 that stuck with it. And it took him about 8 years to get it, and me 10 years. Because we were teaching, and we had to get classes wherever we could. So they let us transfer in the maximum from other schools.
It sounds like they pulled like a bait and switch on you.
Oh my gosh.
This will be so easy
kind of
and so amazing. And then after a year, they're like,
and
okay,
then
now you're on your own.
And then part of the degree was in education. We got most of those classes fairly easily, but then you had to work with your subject area department. Well, my subject area department actually had no clue that there was a degree like this, and they basically created classes for me and then told me I could take classes other places. They would take the maximum 12 credits I could transfer in.
It sounds very complicated.
Yes, and then towards the end, they told me my statute of limitations was going to be over and I needed to finish, or all of my work would be for nothing. And I was like, oh no, I am going to finish I've come this far.
Yes.
I'm going to finish this degree.
So you've got the doctorate in community college education. Is that the same doctorate that Dr. Jill Biden holds?
I don't know. Is this a quiz?
I think it is.
But when I say I'm Dr. Smith, most people are like, what kind of doctor are you? And I said, well, the academic kind.
Oh, you say I'm Dr. Smith. They say, oh, I have this thing on my knee. Can you take a look at it?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. In the wine industry, me being Dr. Smith really doesn't mean anything.
You're not a doctor of wine.
I'm not a doctor of wine, but maybe I could be, but that would be going back and doing more wine certification classes.
That'd be a lot more stuff.
It would be a lot more stuff. 1 doctoral degree and 1 master's degree, to be honest, is enough.
I think you've really achieved a lot of things. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's taste this next wine.
Yes, pour me some and I will.
Oh, how bombastic of me.
I was so enjoying the Cabernet Franc.
It was delicious, but this is actually a nice transition. I've been sipping it for a few minutes. I'm looking at the back of the label. There's a flower.
So it's Koch Winery is the name of the winery. The 2018 Syrah from Vilan is Hungary's warmest region. It's sub-Mediterranean climate. They're known for Cabernet Franc there and the Bordeaux varieties and things like Syrah, but Pálma is the next generation, the daughter. She's in her 20s, and this was her first wine that she's ever made, and they gave it to me. So Is this
a picture of her on the label?
Maybe.
It's an interesting drawing.
It is an interesting drawing. So when I went to Hungary to judge the Wine Lovers wine competition in Budapest, I started my trip by going to Slovakia. I judged the wine competition, and then Koch Koch invited me down to stay with them. I had first gone to see them in 2022 when I won the wine writing competition, but they invited me back to stay for a few days. So she and her husband is from Chile, Gustavo. He helps with the winemaking too. They're located in a different wine region. Their guest house is, and where they make the wine. But then they have vineyards in Vilan. And when I was there, they were building a new space there. They had cellars there. So they make Cabernet Franc, Syrah, some of the big reds I know you like. So I knew what to bring this go around.
Perfect.
I know you like your red wines.
Is Koch Syrah 2018. Is this word here villainy?
Vilan is how you say it. Vilan. The Y is silent in Hungarian.
Vilan. I just want to say villainy.
Vilan.
Villainous.
Well, if it had an I after it.
Okay, then it would
so
be
if you wanted to say, it would be more like an adjective, a descriptor. So Vilani Syrah would be a Syrah from Vilan.
So I'm taking pictures of these labels.
Okay.
So we can have it all.
But I
Instagram.
wanted to bring that because there's only like 1,200 bottles made. It was her first wine. It's on her name's on the back. And they hosted me for a few days.
Tell me what you think of the wine.
It's very dark fruit. I do get a bit of that. Syrah can have sort of this meaty quality.
Like
I'm
bacon.
getting that.
Almost like bacon.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like a smoky bacon flavor.
Smoky bacon.
Love that about
a little
Syrah.
warmth on the end, a little spice. And this is a different, it's not as aged as long. It's 6 months.
6 months in barrel?
Yeah. But this is holding up very well, 2018. But I know you like aged reds, right?
I like
you like
wine.
them with a little
Elizabeth,
age.
Dr. Smith, I like wine. As soon as if you look at my Instagram feed, sure, you'd like, oh, look, Mike likes to hang on to his wine.
That's right.
He likes to drink the old wine.
His sexy wine bottle shots.
Let me just correct you, if I may, Doctor.
Yes, you may.
Hashtag.
Sexy bottle shots.
Very good.
Yay.
Okay, you got it.
And it's my Saturday night.
It's my Saturday night.
Friday night.
My Friday night. Because I'm out of sync with people because my weekend is weird.
That's right. This is your Monday.
This is my Monday.
And we're tasting like it's a Friday or a Saturday.
We're totally down on these wines, but that's okay because we're here by ourselves. It says here 0.2 hectares. What is that in acreage? I always forget if hectare is smaller than an acre or bigger than
It's bigger.
It's bigger.
It's bigger. I think it's about 3 times.
Oh, so this could be half an acre. So they made about 100 cases of this.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 barrels. That's good.
Yeah.
It's got some brightness to it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times Syrah gets bogged down in being a big red.
Well, she has a very bright personality.
Well,
I will tell you that.
It comes through in the wine, obviously.
And I think the 6 months, only aging 6 months, gives it a little bit more liveliness.
It's not at all oaky. It's nice, though. It's got some richness to it.
It does.
I'm going to take your picture. Okay. This is the picture I'm taking for the Instagram, which, is the thing you should be checking out. And you can find me on Instagram at Tall Mike Wine. You can find Dr. Smith on Instagram in a few places, right?
Well, at least one. The main one is Travel Wine Chick.
Travel Wine Chick. All one word.
Yeah.
And
we have one more wine to talk about that we tasted last time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We can't forget the Croatian wine.
Since you're here under the guise of being a Croatian brand ambassador.
That's right. Terra Madre Plavac Mali.
Oh, yeah.
We tasted last time. Plavac Mali is an indigenous grape to Croatia. It's a descendant related to Zinfandel.
Plavac Mali.
Juhfark.
Sounds like something.
Then we have Cabernet Franc and Syrah.
We have some very American-sounding wines, some very, familiar names, and then we have names that are fun to play with, like Juhfark.
That's right.
All right, Dr. Smith, can we talk about how you ended up out here now?
We can.
It seems like sort of a big jump to one day be teaching French and other things at the university level, and all of a sudden being out here in Northern California.
The operative word is being out.
Far from the Carolinas. So you got your doctorate and then you started teaching?
I got my doctorate while I was teaching.
Okay, so you were teaching.
I was teaching a community college in Virginia, southwest part of Virginia, near Bristol, Virginia.
And then what happened?
The operative word was out. I have a thing with layoffs, apparently.
Think of it as one of those things when they say, one door closes,
another opens.
Another door opens.
So during my last few years of teaching, I was getting into wine. And I was started my blog and things like that. I was already getting into wine, which was a good thing because in 2012, I was one of 10 employees that lost their jobs due to lower enrollments. I had no clue this was going to happen. I'd been teaching there a couple of decades.
Wow.
So I got called in to a meeting with human resources and the VP and the president, and I told all my colleagues, I'm going to lose my job. And they look like, oh, no, you're faculty senate president. Everyone knows you all over the state of Virginia.
Right.
And I go into this meeting, and that's what it was. They hand me the letter and tell me it's a budgetary reduction in force.
All the heavy hitters were there.
All the heavy hitters were there.
That's
and
crazy.
I, since I predicted it, it wasn't a total surprise.
Right.
HR and the VP were more emotional than I was, I think. I was still sort of in shock, but I wasn't 100% surprised. And I'll never forget this. The president leaned over and he said, "Don't think I'm the Grim Reaper." And my first thought was, of course you're the Grim Reaper. I mean,
don't think I'm the Grim Reaper
and then
is something the Grim Reaper often says.
That's right. And so I'll never forget that. And I thought, well, of course I think you're the Grim Reaper.
What gave it away, the hood or the scythe?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you walk in and it's your boss, your main boss and the big boss and HR, you know something's going down.
Either you're getting some big award or you're getting the rug pulled out from underneath you.
That's right. That's
okay,
right.
So that happened to you, but you had been
dabbling in wine.
Tell me about that.
I was part of a old school social media frequent flyer forum where I connected with an importer marketing company who on the side hired me to be his travel manager for his business and connected me with two wineries in wine country, Trinity Winery and Anderson's Con Valley Vineyards. So on the side, I was a business travel manager for all these wine companies. I continued doing that after this job ended. And when my severance ran out, I put out feelers for something in wine or travel because I'm travel wine chick. One of the wineries, Anderson Con Valley Vineyards, contacted me and asked me if I ever thought of moving to Napa. And I said yes, because I had been traveling because of my connection with wine. I'd started coming out here numerous times, like 2 or 3 times a year for 5 years. And I immediately said yes to a text message that I would move to California. And 6 weeks later, I was moving here. Yeah.
What year was that?
In 2013, they offered me the job. I moved January of 2014.
Okay.
One way, my cat, a wine check full of wine, checked luggage, landed in an apartment that they furnished with furniture from their former vineyard house that became our offices and Amazon boxes.
And here you were.
And here I am
in
10 years
country.
later.
10 years later, you're still doing it.
I worked at wineries, Eller's Estate, Passaggio Wines, a small producer in Sonoma. And then I decided to pursue my writing, which in retrospect is great in some ways, but in other ways not, because it's hard to earn a living as a writer unless you're a staff writer.
Or you write a bestseller.
Or you have a job at a major retailer writing about wine.
Oh, if only that were the thing. Hey, we have time. Tell me about pet sitting.
Well, I probably should start. My cat deserves all the glory. He really does. I had a cat named Einstein. He was from a past relationship. I used to travel back and forth from Virginia to New York. I was in a long distance relationship. My boyfriend at the time took in a stray, and I said, that stray's pregnant. And she had a litter of kittens in a suitcase, and one of them turned out to be the cat that chose me.
Okay.
I spent lots of time there, and I spent the summer there, and that cat would crawl in my lap. At the end of summer break was over, go back to teaching. I said, I'm going to take this cat home. His original name was Mr. Softy after the ice cream trucks in New York.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an East Coast thing.
But then I decided he was so smart. He played me. That cat totally played me, getting in my lap. And so I took him home with me.
He's the Einstein of cats.
Einstein went from New York, living in Yonkers, New York, to living in Virginia. And then when I got the job in Napa, flew one way with me to Napa and was my companion until he passed away during the pandemic. I did not get another pet after him. I was pretty heartbroken, but I moved to a place that couldn't have pets.
Okay.
But when people started coming out of the pandemic, they started wanting to travel, and people thought pet sitting was a good idea. Mm-hmm. Well, my hairstylist at the time said, I have a friend, she wants a pet sitter. Would you want to talk to her? And so that introduction and then a referral to someone else with a cat is how that happened. And I decided to name my little pet sitting business after my cat, Einstein's Haven.
So if you live here in California, north of the Bay Area, kind of up in the Sonoma, Napa, Marin County area, is there a website?
It is einsteinshaven.com.
Oh, well, there you go.
It is.
You could book.
Some people think it's einsteinshaven.com. I had someone say that, and I was like, I never even thought of that, but they're right, I guess. There is a website, and I do travel to pet sit.
People that think it's Einstein Shaven that actually look for it, they're looking for something entirely different.
I guess so.
That's some kind of kink website.
It is, but it was Einstein. I named it after him because when it started happening, I know this is going to sound bizarre and maybe it's the wine, but I thought that it was my cat's way of staying present.
Mm-hmm. Because you get to visit other cats.
I'm like the aunt that shows up and spoils the kids when the parents are gone. That's what the pet sitter does. And of course, the pets always test you just like kids in a classroom will test you. They will see what they can get by with. And then I'm the aunt that gives them the treats and stuff. And maybe I give them the extra treats and they tell me not to do it, but every now and then I do it.
EinsteinsHaven.com.
Yes.
Did you have fun being on the podcast?
Yes.
I hope it saves in the computer.
Me too.
When we finish up and it's saved.
If not, I guess there'll be 2 more bottles of wine. And one little last thing, I would recommend if people haven't gone to Central Europe, they should go. Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, any of those countries that are maybe under the radar, underrated.
They're certainly way under the radar. The radar doesn't even pick them up because they're small. A lot of the grapes are hard to pronounce. A lot of the names are hard to pronounce. And it's not as romantic as Tuscany.
Right.
South of France. Champagne. So let me ask you one of those job interview questions. I like to.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not doing too great with that.
I like to add a job interview style question to the podcast. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Actually, I see myself splitting my time between the U.S. and Central Europe. And that's how I see myself. And in fact, I'm getting ready to do something a little crazy again. I have been in touch with an organization called Expat in Croatia. And I've talked to a lawyer. And I'm going to apply for a digital nomad temporary residency in Croatia.
So you'll be there part of the year?
That's the plan, and I would hope to extend it with they're one of the few countries that has a digital nomad residency now, and everyone's wanting to get in.
Maybe we'll have another episode with Dr. Smith from Zagreb. But for now, it's the Tall Mike Wine Podcast, conceived, written, edited, produced, and maintained by yours truly. If you'd like to help out with the whole maintain part, consider sponsoring the podcast. It's helpful, and I really appreciate it. Click the link in the show notes or go to tallmikewine.com, and I will send you a stack of coasters as a reward and probably give you a shout-out on the show. If you just want the coasters, well, okay, send me an email to tallmikewine@gmail.com. Speaking of Tall Mike Wine, that's also where you'll find me on Instagram. And if you're not following me, you're missing out on pictures of the wines I'm drinking, the food I'm cooking and eating, and cute pictures of Olive and Izzy. Mostly Olive. She's my favorite. I'm closing in on 1,000 followers. Come on, get in the mix. Oh, and if this is your first time listening, be aware that there are 56 other full episodes and about a dozen mini episodes that aren't numbered for you to hear. Get caught up. Feel free to binge. Also, make sure you are subscribed. And do you know that I'm working on a new episode as we speak? It's true. That wraps up episode 57. Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth Smith, for sitting in. I'm Mike Stone. Keep swirling. Keep sniffing. Keep sipping. Cheers.